Thanks for tuning in to Teach Me to Dad. This episode is a different one to our normal episodes and is the last episode for this season. I asked a few parents that I've been chatting to this season, a bunch of dads and one of the mums, about schooling. And I was interested, curious, I had questions around schooling. So my kids are just starting school. Got one in school, two not yet. So I've got lots of questions. There's lots of options to think about. Public school, Christian school, homeschool, non-traditional school, lots of options. But what I wanted to think about particularly is a question my wife Yanni raised a while back for me, is what's the purpose of schooling? Or maybe put another way, what role do we want schooling to play in the raising of our kids? And then obviously from there, how does that shape which option we pick? And so what I've got here is a collection of me asking this question and the answers that I get to this question from a few different parents. Now, I don't have any big, wise conclusions to draw at the end of this because people brought very different perspectives, and that was helpful. So that's helped me think about these things. So I hope it just broadens your mind and thoughts to hear what some different people think about these things. Now, what's next from the podcast? Like I said, this is the last of the season, and I don't really know what there is from here. This could be the last of all the episodes, or this could be the end of season 2 and a season 3 to come. I don't really know. I usually, for this podcast, over time, accumulate a bunch of questions I have for my parenting, and then I just seek out a bunch of people to ask my questions to, and I record them. So at the moment, I've kind of just wrapped up a series of asking questions. So look, we'll see how we go. Keep following the channel. If something pops up, we're back on, but we'll see how we go. I want to thank for the last time, Fruit. Fruit's been a helpful sponsor for this season. They helped get the word out there. So if you haven't checked them out yet, Fruit's an app to help Christians get into the Bible. I'm wanting to make that more of a daily reality and be a tool to help busy Christians get into the Word regularly. And so there's elements to help you think about prayer, reading the Bible, and even sharing communal encouragements on the Word together. So check out the link in the description to get on Fruit. I'd highly recommend that. For this week's episode, Dads, Teach Me to Dad.
Teach me to dad, I am a dad and I need some help. Teach me to dad, I'll never learn this by myself. Teach me to dad, I am a dad.
What do you think's the purpose of school in your mind? Not in like the institution, and you make decisions around school. It's like, for us, school's trying to do this. I've just been thinking that a lot with my kids.
So your question is, what do you think school's trying to do? Or what
do
should they?
you want school to achieve for your kids that therefore shapes decisions around schooling?
So schooling in my mind, and it's very difficult because schooling from kinder to year 12 is very diverse. But schooling in general is the social construction of a place where they can have their mind shaped in community with others, peers, teachers, to be able to interact with the world with insight and with wisdom. And not all schools do that.
With schooling, right? Everyone makes choices about schools, right? What do you reckon is the purpose of schooling for you? As you've thought about your kids, what did you want out of school for them?
That is an excellent question. The most significant thing for us is that we wanted our kids to be Christian by the time they got to the end of school. So that was some of what caused us to walk towards the Christian education direction and a space that wouldn't be entirely antagonistic to our kids' faith while they were still forming, if that makes sense. Um, I think we did want them to be in a space where, if it's possible, they would be encouraged to develop their gifts and to take responsibility for stuff and do things for other people. So I think getting out of your home and having to relate to a whole bunch of other people, like I think a lot of what goes on at school is not the academic learning, but it's just the social reality of having to work out how to get on with people who are different from you and love the person who drives you nuts. And like that actually was a really big thing for us in terms of what was going on. And so does the... but I do think that in our world, like learning basic skills around reading and writing and arithmetic, they just help you to be able to engage more with the world and be curious. Yeah. So I think another big thing for us was just we wanted kids who had become curious learners. We wanted them to be curious about God's world and want to learn stuff about it and be excited and interested in that, you know? Yeah.
I want to ask you about schooling.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know you've been thinking about it.
Yep.
So what do you think in your mind, not just in the institution mind, in your mind, what's the purpose of school? And then how do you think about schooling options?
I think I'm possibly a little bit different to other people, or I feel like I can see how So I do think on one hand parents give too much to schools, too much responsibility, like to teach your child emotional regulation or how to pack their bag or things like that. At the same time, I think schools have taken that responsibility and nearly like pushed parents out a lot. My kids go to a beautiful school, so I feel like I don't want to say anything I say here to be like against our school particularly. I feel like it's to get them to read and write and think critically and, you know, do all of those kind of skills. But I do think as a parent, I don't want to hand over that to anyone. I don't want to hand over their character development, who they are as a person, how they relate, how driven they are, all of those things. I don't want to hand that over to someone else. So I'm pretty protective of that. If you aren't with your kids all the time, I don't know how you can not have someone else stepping in and filling those shoes, purely because you're not there to be the model. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but good.
That's good.
Don't hand over your kids to someone else. Like, you're a good parent them, and be involved. That's I don't know. Don't let anyone take it from you. Don't hand it over.
Good.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
How are you guys thinking about with schooling? I know you were toying with like the idea of homeschooling.
Yeah, well, we've tossed it up lots and have just been thinking these questions lots. Like, what do we want from this? Like, what are we going for? Are we going for, like, I think the things that I hear is I hear academic things, I hear social things, and then I hear Christian things. I think those are maybe the three things. Maybe mixed with academic is kind of certain life prep things, but it's in the realm of education, social skills, and maybe they send them to school because they want the school to do certain Christian values or teaching in formative years and trying to do some of that stuff. And, well, I have various thoughts of it because there's some of that that's like, well, I can do it. Like, I don't need my school to do that. And in some sense, like the Christian thing, do I need my school to do that? I don't. And for me, it's a question of how much is my school going to work against that? And that's an open, unknown question for me. I kind of generally am pro just being amongst the public school. And then I have some concerns as culture shifts on things, and I just have little fears. It's like, it's probably fine, but on the off chance, it could go way off the rails. I don't know. So that's a piece on that. Yeah. And then there's academically and socially. I have funny views about the social thing of school, and we think socially a lot because of autism and what benefit school is. And I have funny ideas about what school does socially and how well does it socialize you?
Mm.
The thing I always think is that the closest, so I don't think many real life scenarios as an adult match school.
No.
The only one that
Prison.
does is prison.
Yeah.
The only one that looks identical to school is prison.
Yeah.
Where you've got mass amounts of people to relate to, strong authoritarian structure, section time, like no workplace looks like school, no friends group looks like school, no neighborhood looks like school, no sporting team looks like school. That I think, you know what? I used to think homeschooling was the anti-social thing, and now I think, you just depends how you build it.
Mm.
Like, so I've shifted on that. That's, I think, a question is like how, particularly because we've got one kid that's got just more unique needs. That's just a question of like, school is inevitably built for a mass, and he's currently at a school that's doing an awesome job, and it's a smaller mass, so they're working very hard. But a school is always a product built for a group, and that tries to individualize up, but it has to go group.
But by the nature of it,
It has to go group first, individual second, and so we've just got a question of, we'll constantly think, is that working? And we toss up the homeschooling.
So
I'm less averse to homeschooling, than I would have previously been.
I think very similarly. I think where I've gone for myself though is how much of this is me wanting to be in control. That I don't like the structure and the organization of having to do what someone else tells me to do, which I think lots of people probably relate to. Like the idea of homeschooling is good because we wouldn't have to be anywhere on time, and we wouldn't have that stress because I wouldn't have to be out the door at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't have to socialize with who we don't want to socialize with, and we would be avoiding that friendship drama. And even the way I don't do homework. I mean, I don't do. Some of my kids do, some of them don't. It's a lot more of like all of it. I just feel like I keep coming back to is, well, I just want to curate how I want my life to look, and stop putting your structure on top of me.
Yeah.
And so on one hand I go, oh, maybe it's good for me to stay, and maybe it's good for my kids to stay, and just to learn to do things that you don't want to do and that other people tell you to do.
Yeah, I get
which
that.
we don't do in our society today.
Yes. Because when you create your own schooling environment, you naturally protect.
Yeah.
Like that's
you just do what you want to do.
Natural. So I do get that, and I can see not why I don't think that all homeschoolers are overprotectors, but I can see why an overprotector would homeschool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that will naturally happen sometimes. See, so
and
I worry about that.
Yeah, I'm more thinking for myself here. I don't want to put it on anyone, like suggest that anyone's doing this in the wrong way, shape or form. But I just think for myself, I go, there's lots of things that school gives us that I don't want to do that are actually probably really good for us to do.
Yeah, yes. I think that's right. For us it's because we got neurodiversity. For us it's where that threshold is that sometimes school is the same amount of things you don't want to do as sending your kid to a Chinese school in China.
Yeah.
That's like, it's good to be in challenging situations, but like, this is not his world. Like, you know what I mean?
I hear you on that one.
It's like, how much of a threshold is it like? Is it like, but this is just like, this machine ain't even slightly built for him.
Yeah.
Like, so that for us. But
so we had to do that decision-making process with one of our children who we're pretty sure is dyslexic, pretty sure ADHD, just friendship dramas, school drama. This little person was getting crushed left, right and center and emotionally not able to deal with it. And as parents, like we sat down and just went, okay, this is too much. How are we going to protect you in this situation? So we chose to homeschool, gave the terms notice to school, and I just took her out a day or two every week. And that worked to buy us enough, I guess, give her enough of a break. So we've chosen to stay because we did go, okay, well, pro school probably doesn't really want me saying this, but I just kind of go, well, I'm just going to take her out a day a week and cop the consequences of that. Yeah. I am working with school and going to tutoring and stuff on those days so that they're not breaking the law. But to go, okay, well, this is what she needs. Whereas the other two kids, I think homeschooling would really suit them academically. But in terms of they're both bright, they can explore what they're interested in. But sometimes it's good to learn things that you don't want to learn, or persist with things that you. So I just go, I don't know. Like, I'm so not convinced either way. Maybe I'm like a little bit extreme if I was like, rocked up at school and there was a teacher, I don't know, like I've just seen heaps of stuff online, like in America, like rocking up to school on the first day and they've got like a man dressed as a woman as the teacher. I'd be homeschooling. Like, I'm not going to do that. That crosses too many of my boundaries. But I don't know. I just don't know. You could. My point is, it's good to do things that you don't want to do and that are hard to do.
That's good. What do you reckon is the purpose of school in your mind? Not of the local public school. Like, what's the purpose of schooling and education?
What should it be?
Yeah, like, because there's decisions.
In the ideal.
There's decisions to be made about what your schooling option is. And I imagine there's a question of, well, what do we want from the schooling
That's huge.
process? What in your mind is...
One-liner, goodness gracious.
Well, or just your thoughts, like of what you kind of want. What's
as
the
I've said, we
purpose of that?
homeschooled our kids for quite a while, and partly because we travelled around a lot and moved around a lot. We didn't. That was kind of an initial impetus that we didn't want to pull them in and out of schools. So life's full of trade-offs, and so putting kids in schools, you're trading certain things off, and taking them out of school, you're trading certain things off. Elizabeth was very keen to homeschool from an early time, and it took a few years to convince me to have a go. And one of my biggest concerns was socialisation and just kids growing up to be healthy, well socialised adults, that could cut it in mainstream culture. This is my big thing, right? Because I've always considered myself a mainstream cultural type of person, probably deludedly, but especially now, given the cultural tides have changed. So school is a really, in the ideal case, a well-run school, all of that sort of stuff that has good values underpinning its educational philosophy and teachers as role models and whatever else, which is, to me, not the average state school, unfortunately, anymore, I don't think. So in the ideal, it socialises kids to be good citizens, to grow up to contribute to society and so on. I mean, that's like the old ideal of education, so that they know how to fit in, know how to contribute, learn all the good civic values of respect and, civic duty and fighting for your country and all that sort of stuff. Back in the good old days,
yes,
when people still thought about doing that, and I guess so. That's the general educating the individual for life skills, if you like, and then there's the specific technical skills of whatever it might be. Whether it's the sciences or the humanities, and training people up to be vocationally prepared or whatever in today's complex, multifaceted economy or whatever. So the purpose of school is to do that really well. And I think good schools do it really well. And especially good Christian schools will do that, the whole thing, from a holistic point of view or whatever. I guess one of the disadvantages of schools is that it's actually, the average school is a terribly inefficient use of time. So Elizabeth
much lining up and assemblies.
Elizabeth being tremendously well organised and quite a whipcracker when she needs to be, not in a bad sense, but when she started homeschooling, the kids were primary age. She would start at 7 o'clock in the morning or 7:30 in the morning and be finished by lunchtime, like 12:30. And the kids had the rest of the afternoon off to play, and they would kick massive goals during the morning, you know, and then the play was not just necessarily unstructured, but there could be excursions or all kinds of stuff. So, so that's one of the trade-offs that I think a school education, if it's an average one, doesn't do very well. If you're in a high-performance school and you can afford to pay for that kind of stuff, then they crack the whip on your behalf. But I think in a post-Christian society, and I know there's many people that you and I both know that have pulled kids out of like state schools recently or whatever because of the way things have been going in terms of values and so on. But good Christian schools that do a good job, that's fantastic. Like that's the system that Elizabeth and I went through, and we're very grateful for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So individual decision about sending your kids to whatever school. It's one of the big decisions that parents make, isn't it? And I guess it's all about setting priorities in life in terms of how much money do you want to throw at your kids' education? What does that mean about, you know, and life's all about priorities and values and what you put, how big a mortgage do you want to have? You know, what do you feel you need to have? How big a house? How impressive a house? How whatever? In what suburb? You know, what hours do you want to commute? How much time do you need to spend with your family or want to spend with your family? All those things, they all have massive consequences down the track. They're big decisions, and that's another received wisdom that, what was it, Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yep.
So examine all that stuff and make good decisions about priorities, because they have massive consequences.
One more thing that I am super interested to get both your thoughts on, because I know your families have thought about it and we think about it lots and will. School, right? There's decisions to make around schooling, what schooling, where, home, not home, all of that. We're constantly thinking through those things. I'm keen for your general thoughts, but also what in your mind is the purpose of schooling for your kids? I don't mean what do you think the schooling system is trying to achieve, but in your mind, when you think, what do I want for my kid from whatever option of schooling I want, what are the things you want that shape that decision? Does that make sense?
Yeah, look, schooling is one of those necessary evils, isn't it? I think the ultimate would be homeschooling, definitely. But you've got to have either yourself or your spouse up to it, in the right headspace, and just have that ability. It's a gift to be able to teach. I don't possess it, but like we had the dilemma of knowing that Mal would not fit into a normal school environment. There's no way that a bitumen and concrete playground and he would ever go well together, and 1,000 kids. You know, it was just not going to work.
No running on the concrete.
That's right.
Sit still.
So, but thankfully, and we're very blessed to have him in a tiny little school of only 30 students, and they are on a 5-acre predominantly bush block with just a few buildings, and his time outside of the classroom is like collecting sticks, building little stick houses, and digging. He's even got his own digging zone where he has his own shovel and he can go out and dig, and he will dig straight for 20 minutes until the teachers say stop, and then the groundsman has to come and fill it in later on. So, and that's, but it works really well for him, and it also means that, and they understand his situation where if things get too elevated in the classroom, they allow him to go out and someone will go out with him and he'll walk around and collect sticks for 10 minutes and then come back in and things are good again. So, but if in an ideal world, in my opinion, I would think a homeschooling situation would be best, because one size fits all doesn't work for our kids. And unfortunately the model that schooling is, public schooling or private schooling, is that we have to basically appeal to the lowest common denominator. and so kids that have different skill sets or abilities don't often get to fully utilize those because there's other and there's also the disruptive element as well, where kids our kids are stigmatized for being the naughty kids or the disruptive kids or the one that's always sitting out on the porch when the rest of the school's trying to learn. And then the other parents also get resentful because it's your kid that's causing the dramas and my kid's suffering because of your kid. And so it escalates. And we did what we could to alleviate that as much as possible. But I get to give the big tick to homeschooling, even though I don't.
Good on you.
Yeah, so we homeschool with our youngest, and that's been really good for him. I resonate my feelings with Steve about, he would be the naughty kid at school because he'd either already know how to do something and they'd just be teaching him stuff he's already learned, or he might not be focused, and so it's like if they're teaching him stuff that he already knows, who wouldn't be bored? I would be bored.
Yeah.
Plus, their concentration isn't that great.
Yeah.
And if you can get them one-on-one homeschooling for an hour, you can do the same thing in an hour as they do for 8 hours at school. Like, I think of a school and it's like, realistically, how much time do you have one-on-one with a teacher? I'd say maximum maybe 15 minutes a day. So, and if that's a group of 30 kids, it's like that's not that much time.
Yeah. And it's like, it's I don't know.
You want your kid not to be the follower of other bad behavior.
Yes.
You want them to be able to stand up on their own.
Mm.
And so I think it's important that you get them to that stage of being able to stand up and say, yes, I'm not going to do the same thing as you.
Yeah, yes.
Or, yes, I'm not going to follow along.
Yeah. And it's like somewhat like, so I feel exactly the same things as we think about it. And I think it's just the system. Like, I think there's great teachers, and most teachers I know bend over backwards for the kids, and they do a lot and they plan a lot and they're doing too much. Like, and it's like, it's just unrealistic for a class of 30 to individualize to the best extent for everyone. It's just, you just can't. You can't do it. It's just not the system. The system is built for the majority, the mass, that you can do a crass way of putting schooling, but a mass product that works for the most, but doesn't quite work for everyone. So another thought I've had as we ponder the homeschool is, I think I just constantly think about what he'd lose. You know what I mean? Like, out of the schooling thing. And I think the main thing is consistent, regular, same peers. Like, and so I'm aware, I don't quite know the world enough that I know that it's not just your kid only hangs out with your parent, because homeschool community do things together. Like, I just think, like, this is his class and his year group. You grow up with the same kids. Is that, how replicable is that? And do you see that as a cost that you weigh up, or in reality, not even at all?
In reality, I don't think that's actually something you do want to be associating just with your peer group, because it's basically only school and uni that you'll have people exactly the same age in your life.
Yeah, gotcha.
Everywhere else, you'll be associating with people much older, much younger.
Gotcha. I guess when I say peers, I don't necessarily, that's helpful.
Your peers,
I guess
for
I mean
homeschooling is when
consistent friends.
Consistent friends are the ones that you go to swimming with, is going to your sports groups with.
Yeah.
So there are so many groups for homeschooling that are your peer group.
Yeah, yes. Which in some way mirrors adult life, where you have your work friends and your church friends and you have different spheres.
Yeah,
and that's what exists.
Like we just went on an excursion with a bunch of other homeschoolers, and they were all his peers.
Yeah,
all learning the same thing, but at different stages, different amounts. Yeah,
cool. Well, keep your phone not on silent. I might be calling you about how to get that going at some point. I'm not sure yet. Still in that process. Yeah, Steve.
I can speak to the experience of my business partner who's homeschooled. His wife has homeschooled all three of their children, and they started with their eldest because of the same problems that we've just been talking about in a normal school. And homeschooling was the best option. And to be frank, their children are remarkable. The homeschooling has been exceptionally effective. I know that, for example, a couple of years back, they just had to do a set amount of work each day to meet the criteria of the school, the educational programming. And I know one of his sons would get up at 6 a.m. and have his schoolwork over by 7, and then the rest of the day was his own, right? And it just worked so well. Yeah. And even during the rest of the day, he was learning in other ways. Yeah. He was learning without learning. Like he'd follow his interests, and then there was the options to exploit the interests that they have to continue teaching them. Yeah, they pick up everything that they learn at school, but just in a better way. And so that's a real homeschooling success story. And as far as socialisation, which seems to be the big bugbear of anti-homeschoolers, that these kids are being denied normal social environments, that's not the case. I think, and again from what I've heard, is that the homeschoolers actually have a far greater experience of socialisation. They go out with groups to different events and places, and they visit museums, and they go on camps, and those kids, from the other homeschooling families become their peers, and they're like-minded, which is a benefit as well, and they seem to come from like-minded families, which is a benefit in that you're getting good influences from all sides.